Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. This is a requested build. I'm not going to promote a specific build, but we're going to be talking about the Aksomati, particularly the Prime. This weapon is starting to become a bit nostalgic. It's a bit of an old weapon, but still a very solid secondary. There aren't too many things that it does bad, and also there aren't too many things that it does like fantastic. It has been power crept. But for a hybrid secondary, frankly, it's really solid. There isn't going to be a point where the Aksomati is useless. It's not going to be a status goblin, and you're definitely not going to be hitting massive damage numbers with it. Like you're probably not going to be hitting damage cap with this anytime soon. But in terms of a generic, solid hybrid secondary, it still is something to be considered. Now, in terms of like modern day Warframe, would you put a couple forma in this? If you want something where you can just pick up and know that the weapon is going to perform, you can fit a generic build on this. You even can mod around the fact for what would count as like technically a weakness. If you want it to be like your main damage dealer, though, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend it. Because there is stuff that just performs better. But the galvanized mods, the new arcanes, steel path and arcanes, all contribute greatly to this. So let's get into the builds. We'll do the new bro build, um, or at least we'll do like a star chart build, right? Because there isn't exactly going to be a MR0 build for this. As always, let's get our generic multipliers on here. Hornet Strike, multi-shot. We will get our average crit multiplier and fire rate, which will give us 4 slots remaining, one being an Exilus. We're not using the Steel Path Arcane yet. So for here, if you're on the star chart, say you're coming back to Warframe, you got some MR under your belt, and you're looking for something pretty generic, and say you don't have a Kuva weapon yet. This weapon would be something to maybe throw like a couple of format at. It is slightly slash weighted, not enough to really break the bank, but it is more slash than anything else. Um, you can mod into the slash. So for the first generic thing, I would say like just using our generic 60/60s, and maybe throw in a 165 on. The first standard build would honestly be just corrosive heat, or maybe like a 90 mod. Let me see if I can fit this on here. There we go. Okay, so we have base damage, multi-shot, fire rate, crit chance, crit damage to get our average crit multiplier up, and corrosive and heat. Real solid build against the Grenier in terms of the basics. You're not going to be going to level cap with this, but it also doesn't necessarily use any primed mods except for primed heat to charge. And if you don't have primed heat to charge, use the 90 for just a little bit of armor strip, because we're going to be getting armor strip from our 60/60s. And I guess also if you don't have Jolt, just use let's see where we can put this. There we go. Just lean a little bit more into corrosive. It'll give you a little bit better raw damage. Not a big deal. Pistol Pestilence, I'm assuming you're going to have. This is from Corrupted Vor in the Void. If you don't have it, run some Exterminates or like a Survival until he spawns if you're clearing the missions out too quick. Um, that's where you get the Toxin 60/60 mods for everything. I'm assuming you have this. It's so easy to get. Um, but if you are before the Void, to be honest, you probably don't have this weapon. So pretty basic setup. Basic multipliers. Let's see how we do. We have no cat, so no other bonuses. Actually, let me change frames real quick because I've got green shards on here. There we go. So Aksomati. Really decent fire rate. Obviously, these are steel path guys. You're not going to be fighting these on the star chart. Does about 190. Heat dot is going to be our scaling damage. We got some slash. That's going to be coming through a little bit. The 1.4k. Let's get some headshots in. 2.5k. And there's our kill. Obviously not great, but this is going to be when you're crossing over into steel path. If you didn't stop by arbitrations. Now let's grab some RB mods. Our base damage, you're going to need to leave on. The first direct upgrade that you're going to do is going to be the diffusion. Hornet Strike is going to be the thing that we're going to have to keep. So fire rate. And there we go. Now the weapon does have a slight wind up. You can see it there. Actually, let me make sure I don't have arcanes on here. I do, there we go. And let's see how we do now. Alright, so ignore that last test. About 1k. Alright. Let's get some stacks. Alright, we got a stack. Alright, we got some stacks now. Let's see how we do. Body shots. 540. Still doing pretty good. Multi-shots helping out a lot. And again, this is just corrosive heat. Just showing how the weapon performs. Alright, let's move up to steel path builds. Hornet Strike goes away. You have the option of doing Merciless, though to be honest, with this setup, I would recommend Flare. And we will drag this over and we will go for primed mods. If I can get that right, this goes here. We will then swap over, assuming you've been to a couple barrows. So average crit multiplier is a little higher. We have base damage off the mods into the arcane. So now we're getting into some conditionals. We can put fire rate back on. We will now be using lethal torrent, assuming you've been doing nightmare missions, which you should be. Lethal torrent is a fairly easy drop to get. Let's get some stacks. Alright, one more. Alright, there we go. We got all of our stacks. Let's see how our body shots do. 600 on a crit, but this time a clip takes most of the health bar. Our dot's doing pretty good. Alright, and for our final scaling, heated charge gives us a nice little boost. 167 to 207 is our modded damage. Increasing the damage that we're going to see visually, as well as further weighting the heat dot and increasing the strength of the heat dot. Alright, let's see how we do with body shots. Alright, body shots are up to 847. 5.1k on a headshot. So pretty well rounded in terms of something. Like, you're not going to see too many enemies on the steel path that have that level of tankiness. So if you're looking for a build that's pretty basic, pretty generic, these 4 mods don't change. Your arcane can change, but corrosive heat, really solid generic build. It's going to get you through the star chart, most of steel path, obviously no issue. Obviously with the flare, you can get it from the Zeraman. So you could, if you know to farm this, you could get this before getting to steel path, which I would recommend. Flare is incredibly strong at that stage. So you can have this arcane ready before steel path. And the final thing would be just whatever Exilus mod. I would say Ammo Mutation. Whether the regular one or the Prime version, not a big deal. Now for the other builds, the only thing I would really say is just mod according to the plus 75 weakness of whatever the enemies are. So Infested could be Gas Electric, Viral Electric, or just straight Viral, or even like Viral with a little bit of slash weighting. Because there is a Deimos mod, if I can spell it right, Carnus Stinger, which would bring us into, let's talk about the slash build. Because frankly, the slash build is somewhat potent on here. So pretty basic. We still have our four core mods. Base damage status chance from Galvanized Shot, Galvanized Diffusion for multi-shot, average crit multiplier. We're going to get from Target Cracker, Pistol Gambit. Flare, we can swap over to something else. Honestly, I would recommend for this circumstance Encumber. And you would have some options here, frankly. If you're doing a slash build, time to kill is a big deal. Because it's more about, because you're always going to be waiting 1 second for your damage to kick in. So it's really kind of how you want to play it. But frankly, punch through is a really big deal, in my opinion. Because it allows you to hit enemies further away and gets those slash ticks going even faster. So Carnus Stinger is really potent in this circumstance. You can see the impact is 2, punctures 8, slashes 19, with a decent status chance. Obviously, you're not going to have my Riven for it, and if you do, it's not going to be the same rolls. But I specifically rolled my Riven until I got this roll. Multi-shot, status chance, damage. The negative kind of sucks, but it is what it is. For a slash build on this weapon. And I'll show you how that performs. If you're going against a specific enemy and you're not looking for something generic, you would put a faction mod in here because most of our damage is going to be coming from a dot. So let's see how this guy performs. Because you can mod this weapon because it's so middle of the road. You can actually mod this for quite a bit with a very similar build. Let's get one more stack. Alright, looks good. Let's reload. Let's do body shots. So this is more about the dot. You can see 8k, 10k. The slash damage is really nice. For something that's generic, with the same build as what we had before. Obviously the time to kill is going to be a little bit higher, because we're waiting on dots. But that's where punch through comes in. So even though you're shooting at this enemy, you're hitting the enemy behind it. You can hit rows of enemies, vastly increasing your time to kill. Or vastly shortening your time to kill, and killing more enemies at once. So your total DPS output is significantly nicer. But obviously you're not going to be fighting a bunch of guys like this, right? So we're using Encumber for one very specific reason. Because we're so weighted into slash. The fact is like, Encumber in this circumstances is being treated as like the opposite of Hunter Munitions. Where Hunter Munitions allows you to mod the weapon however you want. And as long as you have a 30% or 100% crit chance, you have a 30% chance to proc a slash proc. On this, we've weighted heavily into slash. And we don't care what the status is. So with Seeker, we can swap this off. Lethal Torrent. Put Faction on. So we're trying to get the slash proc up as high as possible. It's nothing insane because it's only 43%. But we're using Encumber to give us as many statuses as possible because this is a bullet hose weapon. So Galvanized Shot has as much to chew on as possible. That's the goal. Now I am going to have some polarity issues, otherwise you would put Hornet Strike here. But obviously we don't have that luxury. So Hornet Strike goes here, and we'll put Velocity back on. So if you wanted to do the build, Hornet Strike would go here, Lethal Torrent would be up here, and Carnage Stinger would be here. Or you could run Velocity and get rid of Lethal Torrent and put Punch Through. Punch Through and Hornet Strike in this are going to kind of compete. And it depends on where you have, what arcanes you have, right? So as long as you get all the stats, it doesn't matter which order. You could also run Rage, Secondary Rage, or sorry, let me see what the actual thing is. It's Rage something. Arcane Rage, where on headshot, 15% chance for 180% damage to... Hold on, secondary. Here we go. On headshot, 300% damage for 18 seconds on secondary weapon. This is easily going to replace Hornet Strike. So you could take this off to further min-max and free up your mod slots. So it's up to you what you have the flexibility into. Obviously, that's going to require an arcane on the frame. But if you're trying to do a secondary build and you really want to min-max the Aksomatis for whatever reason, you can do that. So Hornet Strike would come off. This would come off. Seeker would go back on. And you would have a free slot. You could do like a Riven, like that's what mine's for. Hornet Strike could go on also. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's really going to be sort of dealer's choice. Lethal Torrent can even go on. But obviously I'm having polarity issues because of everything that I put on. So let's do the dual secondary arcanes. You are going to have to force energy economy somewhere else. Let's get some stacks. But this is going to amp the damage up a huge amount. And you can see our slash dots are doing really well. We were getting like 81Ks. That was probably on a headshot. Yeah, 22K. And it's just sort of a generic good time. It primes itself. That's one of the joys of Encumber. Nothing really preferential going on. Just trying to get slash dots and get as much status on it as possible. More status, more better. And we can amp by getting the Panzer, you can get viral onto basically as much as you need, especially if you're like a stealth frame or something. Like this would be like a solid build for like a secondary setup on like an Ash or something, while maintaining a little bit of time to kill and total DPS output. Though obviously there are better builds, but if you really wanted to make this work, obviously you can get it done. And you can see the slash is getting really amped now. The 46K, 13K, let's get some body shots. So just get some bleeds on it. It dies. And if you're stealth, there's nothing wrong with this. Yeah, a little 98K. 57K, let's do body shots. 13K, 72, or yeah, 13K, 7.2K, 11K, yeah, just generic solid bleed build. Nothing insane. So if you wanted to do the slash build, that's how you could amp it. Obviously you have a flex slot, so you can put whatever the hell you want in there. If you don't have velocity, lethal torrent needs to go on, so you get all of your core multipliers. So it is kind of dealer's choice at this point. Obviously, if you have a Riven, you can roll something generic like this, and the damage would go up even further, depending on what your roll is. This was meant for a slash build with Encumber, so this is something similar to what I was using it for, and I'll show you that damage. Okay, spit. You missed. Okay, that time you didn't. So, multiplier is going to multiply. Little baby 100K slash ticks. Nothing insane. But on something that's a bullet hose, it ends up being pretty potent. This is not going to work well against Acolytes, since they have the status cap, right? So we'll go back, we'll remove some stuff, we'll keep our main multipliers on. So the generic build I'm basically going to recommend, if you want to talk about it, recommend, is just basically going to be a corrosive build. I actually have been using this weapon somewhat recently. And it is because of the advent of the shards. I've actually found myself using this weapon pretty regularly. With this Riven. Not that way, hold on. With this setup specifically, with a frame that has like green shards on it, 2 greens. Obviously this is like higher resource cost, right? And anything can really use this combo. Anything with 2 regular emerald green shards will full strip on 10 stacks of corrosive. And the damage is actually super nice on this. And this would be the setup that I'm using currently with this. Without the Riven. with the Riven. You can see this is what I'm using, but I had a ammo mutation mod here. And this does perfectly fine up to like 1Ks. So I don't really have a build that I can recommend, like, hey, I did level cap with this. So the most I got is something that does 1K. And this was still doing it really comfy. Right? Like 1K isn't that big of a deal even on Steel Path. But this was still killing. It was still allowing me to prime. It was allowing me to have like decent damage. Obviously this is a Riven build. So do like base damage or like lethal torn or something like that. And it's just a really well-rounded build. And using something with like corrosive on it, with the encumber and the viral stacks from the Panzer, ends up giving you a full strip, a shit ton of statuses. Still does really decent damage. Especially with the new, what is it, Tandem Bond? What's the one that gives you the, I'm forgetting, I'm getting a brain fart. Especially with the new Bond mod that gives you crit damage. Tenacious Bond, not Tandem. So if the companions crit chance is over 50%, then you gain 1.2 final critical damage multiplier. Just a nice solid plus 1.2. I'll take it. And on the Panzer, rank 4 bite, get you to 50%, get you the bonus. So if you're sensitive about like your Forma dependent, or really struggling with Forma, listen, we've all been there. You need rank 4 in that, and that's good enough on the Panzer. Get you the bonus, that's what this is. 6.3 is what we're looking at. 7.5 is going to be in mission. And I've just been having a really good time with this. Kills 1Ks, very, very ammo dependent. Obviously, we have a very high fire rate just due to the nature of the weapon. Yeah, and I was using it with Wisp. I was even using the Dex Furus the other day. And bullet hose weapons are always going to have their place. And I'll show you what that build looks like. Getting our attack speed from this. Even though generally I wouldn't like advise it too much, because this weapon is additive gun CO damage. Encumber, if you're willing to use a bullet hose, the damage ramp up can frankly be pretty surreal. On a bullet hose weapon with additive damage, and because you gain stacks so fast with a bullet hose, even though I have damage on the Riven, I do find myself on bullet hose weapons specifically when I'm running an Encumber Arcane, just relying on the galvanized shot damage, because you gain stacks so fast, and especially with high multi-shot and high fire rate, you're almost guaranteed an Encumber stack. Now, you're not actually guaranteed, but it's the 25% chance, or 24% chance, yeah, 24, has so many chances to proc. You gain stacks really, really quickly. So galvanized shot being the bonus that having the bonus that it does, where it's plus 40%, stacks up to 3, so plus 120 per status chance. Once this is stacked, it's just 120, right? Well, Hornet Strike is 220, so all you need is 2 statuses on the damn thing for galvanized shot to make Hornet Strike irrelevant, or at least getting like apples to apples, because normally you would have this on here. Versus Merciless, which needs 3 stacks, and Flare, which needs 4. Well, there's gonna be a bunch of stacks on there, because Encumber needs time to proc, but we've got 5 on here already. So Encumber, you're only losing damage on like the first 2 shots, depending on how the status is proc. Okay, so on that one, we have one, two, three. Sorry, one, two. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 statuses. I'm not missing flare damage. Unless you're going like a corrosive heat and you want to pop them and get that damage up front, there is an argument for that. Where you don't want a bullet hose, but this is a bullet hose weapon. If you're running a really high fire rate, you're probably putting 100 effective rounds into something with multi-shot considered. You're gonna benefit from encumber, and it does scale way better than flare, provided you can keep up the ammo economy. So it's just one of those things where like a wisp gets to take advantage of it. If you don't have wisp and you can't off source for whatever reason, say like you need your arcanes, fire rate does get more priority here. So if I wasn't running wisp, or I wasn't running velocity, or I couldn't more particularly, fire rate would go here. Because the weapon does need fire rate a little bit, even though it is a bullet hose. And it's just based on feel. Obviously, 13 fire rate is still pretty good. But for whatever reason, 21 does actually feel better, even considering ammo economy. And that was playing against 1000s, so... Alright, we'll wait for the Panzer. I'm not going to drop a green mote. Buddy, you missed. Spit again. Thank you. So there you go. A little bit of a headshot to get that damage across. The viral from the Panzer keeps your damage up against unarmored enemies. Unarmored enemies are tissue paper. So even though we've got some corrosive on here, it still just plows through them. The equivalent to this would be, like, say, you could do like magnetic toxin, or just do like a pure toxin. Do like a 60-60 setup. So if you want like higher raw damage to burn through, because if you're doing a single element, you're not going to be able to get... It doesn't feel like you can get enough status on this with a single element without a Riven or like conditional mods to really have like toxin shine through. Obviously you can make it work with like, what is it, embedded something? Hold on. Embedded catalyzer. So if you're doing like a level cap setup and you really want to run a toxin setup on this, more power to you. There's embedded catalyzer. It's a shit ton of status chance. And that can help out a ton. So you can do magnetic to get your status chance up. It is going to favor magnetic, but by the time you burn through Corpus, it's going to help burn through shields. You'll have... you will have enough damage to pop most things. Let's just do this. An Amalgam Moa. And Toxin doesn't do bad against these guys, because Overguard doesn't care about dots. Let's get a kill first. You can see the bullet hose effect. I probably should have shot the guy given the damage reduction. Alright, hold on. Where's he at? Alright, first stack. So you can chew through enemy defense pretty quickly. The viral from the Panzer helps you out with getting the toxin dot up. Obviously we don't have faction damage. Probably should have put that on. But if you're dealing with Overguard, you can't get through it anyway until you burn it down. But even against these guys, once it gets stacked up, it'll burn them down. And just having the extra elemental on there, obviously that's an Eximist, that's going to be a harder case. I could do an Optio for pain, but yeah, if you feel like you're not getting enough toxin on there, you can swap this out, go with the faction route. So instead of having like to deal with like magnetic procs, you can just go straight for the dot. And this would work also. Obviously, make sure your form is correct. You're not going to have a Riven, so I have a Deep Polarity messing this up. And make sure to get your Ammy mutation on there. Because you really only have 3 mods that you have to worry about. And the 4th one can be turned into a flex slot with Arcanes. Alright, let's find the Guardian this time, so we don't have to deal with that. Alright, there we go. And obviously in most missions you're not going to have a bunch of Guardians standing together like this, but they can group. And the toxin dots are hitting for like 10k, 11k, 13k. Not bad. But if you're, and this is one of the things where it's like, you can sort of see where the weapon is sort of lacking in modern day Warframe. Like, this isn't horrible, but clearly there are better ones. But the Aksomati really doesn't have... It's like having a weapon that has, like, +6 to all stats. But clearly it's not a 10. And you would just use the other weapon. That's like a 10 in that specific circumstance. Like if you... Since we're relying on dots, a lot of these shots have no statuses on them. So if you're trying to do like a proper dot build, you wouldn't use this. But if you wanted something that like is a generic weapon that you can build up, there's nothing wrong with this before you get something like an Epitaph or a Kuva Nucor, or even like an Ocucore, right? It's like a middle ground. So if you're doing Steel Path and say you came back, you can make the Aksomati work. That being said, and this is going to be the final note on it, we're going to take all of the qualities that it has. It's like a +6 in everything. But the fact is that if you're doing Steel Path and you're thinking about building this up, there's just better weapons. Just pick the weapon, whatever you're doing, like a case-by-case basis. Pick the weapon that does what you need it to do better. And that's frankly the bottom line on it. But in terms of like a generic run-around weapon, I can't recommend this style build enough. So you can just pick up and just go. If you don't have like the Kuva weapons, like a magnetic Nucor or an impact Nucor, or like an Ocucore, something like that. Like if you don't have those kind of weapons yet, and you're not at shards, there is a place for this, but ultimately it's something you pass through. Ultimately, you can make it work, but if you're thinking about doing like level 1k plus, like 2-3 hours into a survival, like that sort of content, you probably don't need help from a YouTube video, let's be honest. So for a generic build, Corrosive Heat, for Cascadia Flare, super solid. I don't think I actually showed this build. Hold on. Where your heat dot is on demand, you just got to get procs, and then you just got to keep shooting, right? So even this is pretty strong. The only thing that I would say that you would have to give like consideration to is you kind of want to balance, if you're going to do the corrosive shard, you want to be able to balance it so you get 14 stacks of corrosive right before the heat dot hits, so you can maximize that 1 second time to kill. Because anything after that, like if it takes you a second and a half or 2 seconds, you need the second heat dot if you're doing a heat dot build. If it takes you 2 ticks, it's probably not a good heat dot build for like Steel Path. But if your corrosive is too weak, you don't get the benefit of the no armor strip heat dot, right? Because it gets that damage amp. And especially removing the defense scaling. So ideally you want to scale this, like balance out the 60/60s. And it's based on what your build is, right? You want to be able to balance out, but because you're getting your status chance from here, you can't really take your foot off the gas too much for this. Like one of the things you could also do should you be using Wisp is to rebalance it this way, and then you just try to get as much status chance on there as possible. Right, so 65%, 64.8. Heat dot is 45, corrosive's 24, slash is 10. Everything else is nominal. And then you would need like a velocity. So you can bullet hose the 14. But you can see we're actually killing a little bit slower. But this would be another option if you skipped nightmare missions for whatever reason. 117 on the heat dot. So as the armor goes down, the raw damage goes up, and still, even though we have like this massive heat dot on here, it's still killing with raw damage. So we haven't even gotten to the heat dot really yet. So it's food for thought. This would scale beyond what we're doing. Like even above these guys, like this would be something a little bit more appropriate if you could outsource the, like, say if you did get a Riven, if you could replace electricity or toxin would be really solid. If you could get toxin off of this and get like this roll, but instead of damage, maybe get a toxin roll, and obviously not negative reload speed. That sucks. But if you could get that on here, and you could get the fire rate back onto it, or just make enough room to where you can get a faction mod on here, it would really benefit you in terms of like extending the levels that you can do against the Grineer. Because obviously stripping armor is a Grineer issue, right? And corrupted. And I guess Deimos infested also. So it's still pretty good just getting the corrosive on. You can even bullet hose it with encumber, but good luck with that. But if you wanted to do something like this, anything with armor would basically remove them as a problem, and everything would just become a health pool after that, right? So there you go. I think I've talked about this weapon enough. Yeah, it's just a really solid middle of the road weapon. If you want a status weapon, there's obviously things that are better. If you want a raw damage weapon, there's obviously things that are better. But if you're looking for something and you haven't gotten like Kuva weapons or anything like that, or like Tenet weapons, frankly, it's just a really solid middle of the road weapon. Like it's not even the best for encumber, right? Like you'd use like the Twin Gremlins or the Prisma, or the Twin Grakadas, the secondary, or Prisma Twin Gremlins, or something with a shit ton of multi-shot. I think right now the king of multi-shot, or king of encumber, is the Twin Grakadas still, unless something's changed. The Velox might be a contender once the Prime comes out, but not yet. So, food for thought. This is a really solid middle of the road prime secondary. And if you are sort of in the same spot that I am, if you just want to use something different, this is a solid option. I'm not gonna lie. Like I find myself enjoying this, just running the corrosive heat build with the Riven. This is my setup, right? Just running around with it, just shooting stuff. It's really solid. There's never a point where it's like completely useless. Just as something different to use. And I think that's probably the biggest selling point of this, is there's never really a point where it does something bad. It's just not the best in any category anymore, but it is like super middle of the road on everything, and there's something to be said for that. So anyway, have a blessed day, guys. This video's gone long enough. Later, dudes.